I'm sorry. Hold on. Just that phrase you just said, you'll probably want to edit this out of the podcast, but it could be taken in such a wrong way.
Oh.
And my mind took it. You said, sorry.
This, I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to be a cold opening of an episode.
Yeah. I just lost it. You just said, I was, hold on, let me get myself. You said, I was wondering how many holes do I still have for Tim Drake?
Gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I said that.
No, thank goodness you didn't realize you said that. Because I'm sorry, this is cracking me up. I have the attention span of a 12-year-old boy. I'm sorry.
No.
You don't like the Drake?
I hate the Drake.
I love the Drake.
How could you not like the Drake?
Who's the Drake?
Who's the Drake?
The Drake is good. Do you like the Drake?
I love the Drake.
What about the Drake?
Oh, screw the Drake. I love the Drake.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Robin, Everyone Loves the Drake comic podcast. This podcast will take a chronological look at the third Robin, Tim Drake. We will be looking at the classic 90s 2000 Robin series and other notable comics with Tim in that era, while also simultaneously taking a look at Tim in the modern era as Red Robin in the pages of DC Comics, plus other Robin and Batman happenings in the world. So sit back, relax, and find out why everyone loves the Drake.
Good for them. Love the Drake.
Got to love the Drake.
I'm impressed.
What can I say? I'm irresistible.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Robin, Everyone Loves the Drake comic podcast. I'm your host, Rob Myers. This podcast is brought to you by the BatmanUniverse.net, your home for all things Batman and Robin. We're also partnering with Batman on Film. You can find us at BatmanPodcastNetwork.com with a whole bunch of other podcasts that they host over there. We're on iTunes and Stitcher, all the places you can find us out there if you're listening, or you can listen at TBU.com. You get a hold of us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, which leads me to my co-host, Terrence O'Neill. How are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. And just so everybody knows, the third member of our team, Ryan, will not be here. Just our last podcast, he was not there because he had food poisoning. And we were recording the same night, so we're recording all of Troika. So I don't want people to think like, oh my God, Ryan's had food poisoning for a month. Someone get this guy to the hospital. So yeah,
he says he's fine.
Yeah. So hopefully by this time now he's fine here now. But Rob and I have very short attention spans and memories, so we would not remember Troika if we waited here. We'd be like, what was this? Was something with Russia or something, right? So Ryan, we hope you're all recovered and feeling better and never go to that restaurant again. But yeah, I did want to mention something about our YouTube channel. We do have a Robin Everybody Loves the Drake YouTube channel. Check it out. I was putting some stuff up there. What I had done with it previously is we were doing with the podcast Nightfall, Knight's Quest, Knight's End, Knight's Crusade, Knight's Search for More Money, all that stuff. And
yeah, sorry, that's funny.
Yeah, and never apologize for laughing at one of my jokes. I appreciate it very much. So, I make jokes all the time at home, and my wife, that's probably something Rob would find funny, or my brother. But anyway, so what I was doing on the YouTube channel is I was doing some quick 5-10 minute comic book reviews, just kind of thumbing through the book of the issues we weren't covering on the podcast, because we were only really covering the Tim Drake heavy books, or books that really were an important key to understanding those series. So I kind of stopped doing stuff and took a little break from it, and I haven't started up yet. But for 2018, I really wanted to get going again, and I was thinking about doing the Geoff Johns Teen Titan run and reviewing those books, because I was not reading comics at the time those books came out. And, Rob might kick me off the podcast for this, but I have never read any of those books.
Oh, man, I love the Titans run.
Yeah,
absolutely.
No reason other than I just wasn't reading comics at the time, and I've heard great things about it. And now that Savior, and all that stuff, no spoilers, but the Teen Titans has become a big part of continuity now in the rebirth. And James Tynion has said, his love of Tim Drake came from that Titan run. I was thinking about doing the Titan run. So they had actually a sale on the trade paperbacks on digital of the first volume 1 of the Geoff Johns Teen Titans run, a sale. So I bought volume 1 digital, and I was like, oh, cool. I could take screenshots and, show that on YouTube and, do like what they do where they block out the words so I don't get, sued by DC or something, and make it look good and not just me sitting there talking. But I started reading the first few pages, and it was very confusing. And I'm like, what's going on? And they're talking about like the death of Donna Troy and stuff. And I'm like, is this issue 1? And it turns out the graphic novel starts off with actually an issue that was called Teen Titans Outsiders Secret Files and Origins 2003. And so I was like, what is this? Where is this coming from? And so what I hadn't realized, and maybe you're a fan of this or not, before the Teen Titans, Tim Drake was in a book, Young Justice, which was not based on the cartoon. It was based on just a Peter David run of it's Tim Drake, Impulse, who I really love because I was reading The Flash when he was created and everything, and I really like Impulse and Superboy, and it was kind of a fun, lighthearted take on those characters. And in fact, when I read it, some people didn't like Geoff Johns' Teen Titan run because Impulse with Bart Allen went back to being Kid Flash, and it was a lot more serious, and it was a much more serious take. So then I was like, well, I got to figure out what's going on in Young Justice to figure out what's going on in Teen Titans. So let me change my plans and let me do Young Justice. So anyway, long story, even longer. That's my goal for 2018 on the YouTube channel, is to go through the run of Young Justice. Because I once again, I've never read any of those issues either. And a lot of them you can get on sale or regular price on digital for 99 cents an issue, which is a pretty good deal. So hopefully by the time this podcast airs, I'll have a few things up in that regard. That was part of why I said to myself, I'm like, I should say this on the podcast so that way it'll like force me to get motivated and get those up there. Sometimes I wonder, I'm like, man, I wish all this like YouTube and podcasting and all this stuff was around when I was like 20, before I had like wife and kids. I would have had so much extra time to do this. And then I think like, but maybe I wouldn't have a wife and kids if all this was there. I'd still be in my mom's basement. Like I can't go to work today. I got a podcast to do. So,
Terrence, you're 42. Are you going to get one of those job things?
No, I'm on 17 podcasts. That's my job, But anyway, so did you? I know you said you were a big fan of the Teen Titans. Did you like the Young Justice, and do you have that whole run, or do you just have parts?
I have. If you've been following me long enough with Everyone Loves a Drake, I've been finishing all my holes in the Robin solo series, which I think I was missing about 25, 30 books. So I completed that, and I was like, oh, what other issues do I have for Tim Drake? And Young Justice was one that I was missing a lot of. So I have the first 30-some-odd issues all, and I've got, some sporadic, but those first 35 issues I absolutely loved. Long story short, which is the theme of this podcast, yes, I was reading a lot of the Geoff Johns Teen Titans run, and I had picked up, like, once Tim leaves the team, which is, man, I forget how long that when I started, I fell off of it, and Tim kind of comes back in and out. They had set up a deal and learned from the Nightwing, Dick Grayson scenario that the Bat family was like, okay, you can use Tim Drake, but we are going to use him exactly at the same time. So kind of like Batman, Tim was in 3 books at the same time. Like Young Justice and Teen Titans kind of spilled over a little bit, but I think once Geoff Johns got a hold of it, they quickly disbanded the Young Justice books, so that way you weren't confused with 2 teen teams working at the same time. So yeah, I really like if I had to pick one over the other, I like the Teen Titans run just a little bit more than Young Justice, but Young Justice is so good. You'll really enjoy that. Yeah. This is going to be our second half of Troika, and the books we're looking at today are Detective Comics. Detective Comics written really small and Batman in 682, and then in the main book for this podcast is Robin number 14, where Robin appears on the cover. So we'll get right into Detective Comics here right after these messages.
Steph.
What?
Have you ever read a Superman comic?
Not in the last few hours.
Oh, I was just checking, right? Just checking.
Hey everyone, my name is Michael Bailey, and I have been a fan of Superman for as long as I can remember. In 1987, I started collecting the Superman comics as a going concern, which led me down a long and winding comic book-filled path to 2007, when I first started podcasting. Well, it's 2017, and because it's been 10 years since I started podcasting, and 30 years since I started reading Superman full-time, I thought it might be fun to start a new show called It All Comes Back to Superman. It All Comes Back to Superman will be my monthly reaffirmation of my Kryptonian faith, where I will pick out something about the Man of Steel and discuss it. Sometimes I'll be alone. Sometimes I'll have a guest. No matter how many people get involved, Superman will be the focus. It All Comes Back to Superman is part of the Fortress of Baileytude podcasting network. New episodes will drop on the 28th of every month. This show and all of the other programs that are part of the Fortress of Baileytude podcasting network can be found at www.fortressofbaileytude.com.
Movies, TV, comics, music. Pop Culture Affidavit has it all. It's everything random in the world of popular culture, and it's all covered by me, Tom Panarese. New episodes drop monthly at twotruefreaks.com, and be sure to check out blog posts about random pop culture topics at popcultureaffidavit.com. Pop Culture Affidavit, the sworn testimony of a dork.
All right, we're back. Detective Comics 682, and it's nice that these two books, I did like the first two, but I thought they were the weaker out of the story. Our good pal Chuck Dixon is doing the writing for both these books, and I really like when a story is tied, the Robin book is tied into Detective, that you get consistency through the two books, that Chuck's got a really good handle, even if it's a whole Batman family story. When Chuck is at the helm of the story, he's really good at pulling in, like, okay, you guys mentioned this little plot thread in the first book that I didn't write, but he can really weave that stuff in together, where the first two books we were kind of like, okay, this really doesn't make sense. He can kind of pull those together or chuck those things that really didn't make sense and go, here's the part of the story that we really need to pay attention to. So I really do like these two books. We'll talk about the cover here. The things are getting a little bit brighter. And when you saw Justice League, did you go, when Batman is standing on top of the gargoyle and he jumps down to talk to Commissioner Gordon with Wonder Woman and The Flash, the skull statue that he's standing on here in Detective 682 is very reminiscent to the skull statue. I always like to think when somebody's making a comic book movie, like, was there a reason they chose that particular type of gargoyle for Batman to be standing on? Because it looks very eerily the same as this image. Did you realize that at all, even when you looked at this comic? Like, hey, that's kind of like in Justice League.
Yes, but in reverse. I noticed it when I looked at the comic to pull it out to reread it for this podcast. Was like, oh wow, this looks just like the Justice League gargoyle. And so so I did, but not when I was watching Justice League, when I was looking at the book. But here, you could see on the formats called deluxe format or specialty format, not the newsstand edition. It's the same pose. Batman standing there. He's got his fist clenched. He's standing And you can see the new costume. You can see the fins on the legs. So if you listen to our last podcast, we were talking about this, how you couldn't really see too much of the new suit because the artwork was in so much shadow. And even here, this cover looks kind of like the Michael Keaton Batman costume.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the ab section and the muscles of the 89 Batman, and then the symbol where they went back to the original for Batman Returns. And even in the letter columns in Robin 19, which referenced Troika, somebody had said, and I can't find it right this second, but someone had said, like, oh, you guys should do more of the costume like the Michael Keaton movies or the movies. And so I was kind of under the impression that it would be more of that. Oh, here it is. His name was Stuart Brennan from Brooklyn, New York. And he said, it still doesn't look appreciably different, though sure, now that it's a one piece, it looks awfully sleek and it seems to be a little darker than the old model. But is it as dark and forbidding looking as, for example, the one Michael Keaton wore in the movies? Not quite. Yeah, I think a lot of fans were kind of that way as well. And when there was something else, the editor replied, somebody else complained about the costume not really looking that good. And the editor said, a few readers shared your sentiments regarding the seemingly lack of change in the new costume. To this I say, view the changes in the larger perspective. Batman's costume has endured for over 5 decades, and in that time, the only significant change came at the character's silver anniversary with the addition of a yellow circle on his chest emblem. In retrospect, that change still seems huge. I will let history judge our recent alterations. And that the editor was Gorf, I think that Jordan Gorfinkel or something like that.
Gorfinkel, yep.
Yeah. So, that would be true, I guess, if we hadn't seen the Nightfall costume,
right.
The Asbats one. So, it's like, yeah, kind of, but do you remember that thing you did a few, years ago, or even in this point or whatever it was, like a year and a half ago? And then I never noticed this before, just looking at them, and I know we'll get to it, but you had mentioned in the last podcast that you had Barry Kitson sign Shadow of the Bat 35, and he said, oh yeah, we put the fins on Batman. And I just noticed that on this comic, Batman's got the fins on, but then our next comic that we'll review, Robin 14, it's almost the same exact pose, but there's no fins on the legs. And I had never noticed that before, but I guess that's the fins lasted all of 3 issues.
Right.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting just to see when they ditch this darker costume and he gets the trunks back on. I think Grant Morrison would start the JLA in this darker kind of black costume, but before his run's complete, he's back in the blue and gray, or black and gray, depending on who's coloring it. All right, before we get into the discussion of Detective Comics 682, let's go to Mike'sAmazingWorld.com and take a look at the information of this particular issue. The cover date is February 1995. The on-sale date is December 27th, 1994, for a cover price of $1.50. The editor is Scott Preston. The cover credits for the Standard News edition go to Graham Nolan, and the inker is Scott Hanna. The interior of this issue is entitled Doomsday Clock with a 22-page count. The writer is Chuck Dixon. The penciler is Graham Nolan. The inker is Scott Hanna. The cover is John Costanza. The colorist is Adrian Roy. The deluxe version is listed here as a reprint, but we know it's not. And for whatever reason, the deluxe version was the one that most people picked up. I don't know how that happened. A lot of people that I have talked to, and you'll hear us talk about it in the show previously, and in this one, that this was just a version that was just in comic shops everywhere. The cover credits are obviously the same, or the interior is the same just because of it just being a deluxe version, but the exterior cover with the almost full color now Batman go to Graham Nolan, but the inker on this one is Terry Austin. Now let's get into the synopsis for Detective Comics 682, and again, I'm using DCWikia.com for the synopsis. It's nice and concise, and I might continue to do more of these, save me from having to write one all the time. Here we go for the Doomsday Clock. And not to be confused with DC Comics' Doomsday Clock. You know, this is from the 90s. Anyway, here's a synopsis for Troika, the Doomsday Clock. Romanana and the KG Beast are all that is left of the Troika, and the Dark Rider's nuclear device literally drops into the KG Beast hands. Romanana, meanwhile, keeps up the pressure on Wayne Enterprises, so much so that Bruce Wayne arranges for Lucius Fox to get out of danger and then goes after Romanana in the night in the guise of Batman. Robin tracks a fire at Wayne Chemical Plant, discovering the KG Beast, who incapacitates Harvey Bullock and then reveals not only is the miniature nuclear device in his possession, but he also plans to use it. Dun dun dun. This issue, Doomsday Clock, opens up where we were talking about this first page probably should have been the cliffhanger to the issue where, hey, Batman's swinging, and the next issue, you can clearly see where it almost looks like the line is cut, or he went to go toss the grapple line out and completely missed and is plummeting to his certain death. And you see Tim Drake Robin swing in and throw his bat line on and has to kind of deflect his throw a little bit and kind of bounce Batman off Corgi's sign here of looks like an alligator. Corgi's back, and At for Laughs, starring Peter Sewin and Vinny Chenzo for Paragon.
Vincenzo.
Yeah.
All right. Are you ready for a deep cut?
Yeah.
Ready for a deep cut?
I'm ready for a deep cut.
So if you remember in the Night Quest,
Crusade.
All right. I'm getting them mixed up. Night Quest, the Crusade, Azrael meets the Joker. And the Joker has gotten this, and I did this on the YouTube page. The Joker has become a movie director, and the Joker is got like these movie producers tied up, and he's making a movie. And the movie that the Joker is making is Crocky, the story of a crocodile. So this is the sequel to the movie that the Joker was making. Both those issues were written by Chuck Dixon, and I only know that because as I was looking stuff up for the podcast, one of the websites had like a trivia thing about this issue, and it said that. So I think that was the DC Wika thing, or it might have been Mike's Amazing Comic World. I know you sometimes. It might have been one of those too. But yeah, that's a cool little throwback for if you're a Chuck Dixon fan.
Wow. And to also know, so they must have released the Joker movie, and it did really well to get Crocky too.
Yeah.
And I like how Chuck writes Tim here that he realizes that Batman's weight is going to pull him both of their death. He can't, pull him up. He's got to bounce him off the sign here. And Bruce is very much, he's talking about things changing. He's like, no, it's my fault. I probably shouldn't have been out here swinging, across the skyline. I thought I would have been better. Colonel Vega's mind thing must have really got me all disoriented more than before, and it talks about being found in a stairwell unless you wanted to give that last stun another try. So it was kind of like, wow, this is a Batman that's kind of knows where he's been and his shortcomings from Nightfall. He's kind of realizing, like, I can't push myself like I did, and I just got out of this tough situation, and I don't want to make the situation worse, or you're going to be picking me back up off the street. So what did you kind of think about Bruce and Tim's dialogue in these first couple pages here?
Yeah, the thing that was most shocking is as Batman's falling, Tim is able to get his grappling hook around those fins on Batman's legs. So maybe those fins saved his life here. Batman shouts up, "Let go, Robin, you can't do it." Look on Robin's face. He's got his teeth clenched. He's like gritting. It's great artwork by Graham Nolan here. He says, "The hell I can't." And I was like, whoa, that was like, that's heavy for Tim Drake. Like, he usually doesn't, do that, but also it like showed his confidence and his just determination. And I think it's like ramped up a little bit in front of Bruce. Like, Dick was like his fraternity buddy, like his pal, like, hey, let's go out here. And when he got that glider and he's like, you know what, maybe I'm not going to do this here, but he's not going to back down with Bruce, and in fact, in Robin issue 15, which will be the next Robin issue, he's on the cover with the glider. Like, he overcomes that fear. So I think it's kind of cool that we're seeing like an evolution of Tim Drake becoming more and more confident and more assured, but he's also not becoming the snot-nosed brat that often gets written for teenage characters that make us, hate his guts. So that's what I took out of it.
Yeah, and I also like how Chuck is writing Tim, that Tim has kind of been through the ringer just like Batman has. And Tim has grown a lot to where if this was back in the early days of Tim, he might not have, not that Tim is standing up for himself, but Tim knows, I can do this. I know the hero that I need to be. If this would have been a different writer other than Chuck, since Chuck is writing Tim to be the strong type in his own book, that goes to show that, well, Tim should be acting like this in a Batman book as well. So I like that there's some maturity here for Tim, and that Bruce also realizes that as well.
And in our last podcast, we talked about how there was some humor in these two issues and how we both felt it was kind of appropriate. And I kind of drew the comparison. It kind of reminds me of some of the humor that we saw in Batman in the Justice League movie. And this is what I'm talking about here, where Batman, he's not cracking up. He's just got like a little half smile, but where, Robin says, "Where are you going now?" And Batman says, "To find a stairwell, unless you want to give that last stunt another try." Like, that's a joke. It's funny, yeah. But I could see Affleck's Batman. Yeah. Making a quib like that in Justice League. So did you find that humor like out of place, or does that kind of jive with your Batman?
I thought that worked really well, and it also this is some of the new stuff Bruce was talking about, rather than being so dark and brooding, which Batman's eventually going to get back to that way. That's the typical Batman I know best, and I don't make jokes. But even when Batman doesn't make jokes, he still does. Even watch Brave and the Bold. Even though that's more funny slapstick, Batman still plays everything pretty straight, and it's all the outside characters that are funny. So I thought that was very typical to do, and like we said, I could hear Kevin Conroy's Batman make that same type of little quip as well. The Troika loves their warehouse and their Indiana Jones boxes. So this is them really trying to figure out where this nuclear device is. It's the size of a baseball, and this was something I wanted to ask you, that we see them kind of argue back and forth with each other with the KG Beast and the Star Chick here. Yeah. I'm going to start calling her Starro. Not really. That I didn't even realize, which I think is how confusing the first two issues were, of how this baseball even the nuclear device got up here on the shelf. Did we miss that? I don't think we missed it. Was that like an off-panel thing?
I believe so. I believe that in the first part of the story, the Dark Rider, mentions it being a baseball. And I know in Shadow of the Bat 35 on page 10, you see it in the panel. And in Batman, what was that, 515, it's mentioned, but you never actually see him place it there. So, yeah, the whole thing with the Troika was very confusing here. I'm looking on page number 11 of Batman 515. He's got the baseball and he's throwing it around. But let's see, does he ever place it somewhere? I don't think so.
In Shadow of the Bat, page 9, if you have your book at home, and page 10, actually more page 10, you see the ball sitting up there. You see where it says Cossack matches, and it's above their head. So the Dark Rider must have put it there at some point, because it is not shown at any other point, it being there, and it's above their head the whole time, other than Vega having his back to that ball with the KGB. So that's the only thing I can think of why it's there.
And I know this is a book that takes place in a universe where there's a Kryptonian and Green Lanterns and everything. But even in 95 or 6, could there be a nuclear device that small that would actually destroy all of Gotham? It seemed a little far-fetched, but I don't know much about nuclear bombs, so maybe. But it just seems a little small to take out the entire city of Gotham. But then again, it's also not exactly the most, realistic universe either. So
right, we have a guy that cut off his hand in the KG Beast to get away from Batman. Yeah. So thinly veiled lines. My wife always says, I'm telling a story. Hey, be careful, you're pulling at threads here you don't want to know the answers to. So I'm like, okay, all right. So during a little scuffle, as some of the Troika members are leaving, ball rolls off. KG Beast must play some good baseball in Russia and is able to catch the the nuclear bomb that's the size of a baseball, signed by Babe Ruth, that they stole from Sandlot. And, and now he has it.
Yeah, I really noticed too. In all three of these writers, the 4 issues, they write the dialogue of the KG Beast very different. And Chuck Dixon seems to really ramp up that like bad stereotypical Russian accent than the others do, because all of a sudden, from out of nowhere, it just comes that he talks completely different in this issue.
Yeah, it's like I'm trying to remember the Robin Williams movie where he's playing a Russian. It's that bad.
Moscow on the Hudson.
Yes. Where it's the bad English version of, this is what Russia, we sound like this from Mother Russia. Could you be, that whole type of shtick.
I think it was Robin miniseries or something where it's like, I am being KG Beast and I am being killing you now, or something like that. That's how like the issue ended. Yeah, it's pretty bad.
We have Bruce Wayne making his first return on page 9 here to Wayne Enterprises and kind of talking with Lucius about Troika and everything that's kind of going on with the transitions and everything. The Troika members are coming back in, and Bruce gets kind of mistaken and kind of basically says that he's the assistant to Lucius Fox. She even makes some mentions here that Bruce looks like a movie star or something like that. That this is kind of like, if this was 2018, you would know who the richest man in the world probably would be in America. If this was Donald Trump here, you would kind of know, hey, this is your building. This is Trump Tower out here. I think we know who it is. This is Wayne Enterprises. But they don't pick up that this is Bruce Wayne. It's Lucius Fox's secretary or his assistant, so they kind of let it go here. And I get a Kevin Conroy impression out of Chuck Dixon's writing here, which I believe the animated series is going on. Yes, the animated series was going on very much at this time. So did you get kind of a animated series Kevin Conroy vibe out of kind of the fumbling Bruce Wayne here on 9 and 10?
Yeah, I did. And this part was like a little bit of like, come on, man. Like, you're going to become the head of the organized crime in Gotham City, and you don't recognize Bruce Wayne in Wayne Tower. Like, I get it if they're at, Scotchke's Deli or something, and he walks in, but they're at Wayne Tower. They're like, come on, like, there's no picture of Bruce Wayne in the lobby. There's nothing like, and it's funny too because Romana, she busts in the door here. Her arms are wide, busted in the door, and she's in like full Russian winter military gear with like the Russian hat and everything. Like, how cold is it in Gotham? Because I don't see any snow in the panels. And the KG Beast, I know he's a tough guy, but he's like wearing short sleeve, and Robin's got the short sleeve, so it's kind of funny. But it's the kind of stuff that Chuck Dixon can get away with. Like, it's bad, or just not bad, but it's just like 80s action hero movie kind of stuff that you just kind of just go with and just have fun with. And the thing I liked so much about Christian Bale's Batman and the whole relationship with Lucius Fox and Bruce Wayne in the Nolan trilogy was how Lucius Fox was just like, whatever you want to do with this stuff, it's your business, but don't think I'm an idiot. And then he helps him. Like, I really liked that take on Lucius Fox more than this, like, Bruce is a dumb guy and Lucius just does everything. And so I get what they were doing in the comics, and I get why this works for the comics. But I prefer the Dark Knight trilogy kind of Bruce Wayne, Lucius Fox relationship. And what's kind of interesting, I know we'll get to it, I'm jumping around here, but at the end of Robin 14, you see Lucius Fox's family, and it appears he has a wife and a daughter, but there's no son. And I was like, where's Batwing?
Right.
Now I guess you could play it off that he's away in college, or whatever reason, and this is also a retcon universe. But I wonder if Lucius Fox, what's his son name? Is it
Luke?
Okay, yeah. If Luke actually even existed, or when Luke, I should look that up.
Yeah, I'm going to guess he's probably a New 52 character.
I actually forgot about this here too, because his daughter is named Tam.
Oh yeah.
And she's introduced, this is from Wikipedia, which we know is never wrong, but she's introduced in Red Robin. Her father sends her to personally locate Tim Drake, which I guess is Tim Wayne at that point in the continuity, only to discover his secret identity as Red Robin and become involved in his conflict with the League of Assassins. For a time, it was believed Fox was dead, but this was a ruse to help combat his enemies. It is believed that learning Drake's secret has led Tam Fox to realize that Bruce Wayne is Batman. However, she apparently did not report her findings to her father. And then there was a younger daughter, Tiffany, who was first shown in Batman 308 in 1979, but was not explored until the New 52 reboot, which reintroduced her along with her siblings in Batwing number 22. And the alternate future story shown in Batgirl Future's End shows Tiffany growing up to be a gifted prodigy of Barbara Gordon, becoming one of several women to use the Batgirl moniker with a pink accented batsuit. And then this is prior to the New 52. Lucius had a son named Timothy who occasional delinquency embarrassed his father. In the New 52 continuity, his son is named Luke Fox, an intellectual prodigy and mixed martial artist. And then it goes on about how he takes over Batwing. So I guess Luke Fox is a product of the New 52. For some reason, I thought he was much older than that, but I guess it's more of a new thing. But I forgot about his daughter in the Red Robin series. So.
Yeah, because they had a romance for a little while once Stephanie had become Batgirl. She was busy doing her Batgirl thing, so Tim and Steph weren't spending that much time together.
And, I have a little bit of a dilemma here because what's going on now in the comic, you see Harvey Bullock has got his new partner, Brock. They keep making reference that Brock knows a lot. Like he keeps, at one point, Harvey says, how do you know that? And he's like, oh, I read a lot. And he's like, oh, college boy. And then there's something else where we'll get to it a little later on, but actually, it's in Robin, also written by Chuck Dixon, where Tim also questions Brock about his knowledge. Like, how do you know all that stuff? And so I'm wondering, like, is there more going on with Brock? Like, it's like he's setting up a mystery, and I'm like, do I want to just go on Wikipedia and look up Brock and find out what exactly it is? Or do I want to just like let it play out? And as I read these issues for the podcast, find out without giving people spoilers, namely me. Do you remember what the backstory is with Brock and why he's so smart? Or
no, I don't. I'm glad you kind of said that. Like normally us good podcasters, we want to pull, all this information up for you guys. I flinched to go for the computer while you were talking to look it up, and I'm like, you know what? I kind of don't want to know. I kind of want to find out if this character goes anywhere since Chuck Dixon is writing him. And it'll be nice to, even though we're staying in the Robin book, to kind of flip through Detective Comics, you just kind of boning up for the podcast and seeing where he comes from, because they're really setting up a lot of stuff for him. Like this guy, Chuck's really good at giving somebody dialogue that's important. Chuck's not a throwaway kind of guy to write something. If he's having the characters say something, Chuck's going to pay off all that knowledge at some point. Like other writers may kind of do that, and then by the next issue, it's like, oh yeah, that thing happened a while ago. We never revisit it. And Chuck got to write a lot of these books for so long. He not only got to see his original plot threads through, but he was able to reset and set new plot threads that he stayed on these books for quite a while. So I'm kind of in the camp of like, let's kind of see how this plays out.
Yeah, and like he was introduced in another book, real brief. It was only like 2 or 3 panels. They're like, here's your new partner. Here's Brock. Okay. And like, what's that? But as you start to read these, you get the sense that like, oh, if there's just something completely unrelated to the story and they just introduce somebody like in the last podcast, Tim was talking about, oh, there's this new vigilante who's beating people up. Like, that's a seed that they're planting for something down the line. And you can tell that they're planting seeds here with Brock, and I'll probably cave and look it up. But, but I was wondering if you remembered, because I don't remember what his thing was. I feel like he was like a secret agent or something with the government or something like that he has all this knowledge, but I don't remember offhand.
And my gut reaction was like, ooh, is he the Spectre? But I know that Brock's not the Spectre, so...
Yeah, who was that? That was Crispus, right?
Crispus, yeah.
Crispus, yeah.
So that was my first thing, and then once I realized, they're like, oh, no, that's not him. And not to get off on a tangent, but I always thought the Spectre was just really a cool character. So anyway...
Yeah, let's go off on this tangent. He's cool, but to me, he's kind of like almost a little bit of a problem of Superman. He's almost too powerful.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of a cool concept. It's kind of a cool thing, but then like, what can't he do? Like he can, so it almost works better as like a horror comic and not part of the DC universe. Right. But he is a really cool character. They had a DC animation movie. I forget what it was.
Oh yeah,
what it was attached to, but it was a short. I don't know if it was in that collection of shorts where it was attached to one of them, but yeah, that DC animated short was really cool with the Spectre where he was like torturing people and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. I bought the whole short collection, and I think I also have it as it's tied to something else. I want to say it was a Justice League tie-in movie, if I remember right. Maybe it's, I can't remember. We'll have to look it up. I'll put an editor's note in here somewhere to what that's tied to, because that's a really cool short. I remember the Green Arrow short being really cool as well.
Yeah, the Green Arrow one's really good.
All right, moving on here through the latter half of this book with KG Beast and his fire here. It seems like every time Tim is going up against the KG Beast, he is either getting burnt or shot at. But I like how, again, Chuck Dixon is writing Tim, that Tim's inner dialogue is knowing, okay, Bruce is going to be showing up, and the last time I ran up KG Beast, I barely got away with my life, so I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to wait till Batman shows up and we'll take the KG Beast out together, but things are not going to go that way. We have Batman finding Romana here, hiding behind the curtains, where it's almost kind of a Batman Year One, David Mazzucchelli. He's coming from behind the curtains. In that book, he broke through the window here. But I always like that Batman either comes through a window or he's standing in the room already. But this one, I love Graham Nolan's drawing here, where you kind of see in the bottom of 19, you just see the purple curtains there and the word balloon coming from around, and then Batman slowly pulling it, and he's all in shadow. You're just seeing the whites of the eyes. I love when Batman's all in complete black silhouette. You don't see the mouth, but you see those whites of the eyes, and they're really small. And that's just kind of one of the cool images I like of Batman.
This page makes me so happy. It is so cool. You see like the Russians, and she says, Stargirl says, we will see how Mr. Bruce Wayne himself responds to terror. And like I said, you just see this word balloon from behind the curtain say, you know nothing. I wish I could do it like Kevin Conroy, but you know nothing of Terra Romana Verozensky, but you will learn. And you just see his white eyes like that. Oh man, that is just so cool. Yeah. And I really like this take on Tim Drake, where he's in this like exploding fire where, KG Beast is shooting like missiles at oil tanks and things like that. And he's kind of in this like, I don't know what to do, because if I go up against this guy on my own, I'm dead meat. And then why doesn't Batman get here already? And then he's kind of forced to go into it and sacrifice himself or risk himself when he sees that Bullock and Brock are in danger, and he puts their safety above his own. So I thought that was done really well, as opposed to just Tim Drake, swooping in and taking on the Beast himself. It really accentuates like the danger of the situation.
Yeah, and the shot in 12, the 4 panels here where the KG Beast chucks like the 50-gallon drum right at Bullock's head. Yeah. And it looks like he's dead down here on the ground. You kind of see the pool of blood behind his head, and Tim calls out Bullock's name and asks if he's breathing as he's swinging down. This is Brock's first time seeing Robin here. And we have the KG Beast holding the thermal detonator that Bosk, that's Star Wars. It looks like the thermal detonator right here. And his implausible square of a hand that's like the Swiss Army knife, the cork opener, the blade, the machine gun on his here. Yeah. But Nolan does draw him very well here. He's kind of holding it up, and it says to be concluded in Robin 14, and this is waiting for the Batman to witness the triumph of the Beast, but the boy wonder will be almost the same. So if he can't get Batman, at least he's gonna get this meddling kid. So what'd you think for the end of those end sections of Detective Comics 682?
to me, it almost doesn't feel like an end. It feels like the first 2 issues of Troika are so different than the second 2. In fact, it's kind of weird because when you open up 682, the title of the story is not called Troika, and you don't even see that anywhere. It's called The Doomsday Clock, which I think, isn't there a book called Doomsday Clock out here now? And maybe it's a little popular with Geoff Johns and Dr. Manhattan and Superman and Rorschach and all that. But this is the other Doomsday Clock. This is the better Doomsday Clock. This just feels like between this issue and Robin 14, it just feels like one long issue. So it doesn't really feel like an ending. And especially because I read them back to back, it just felt like, all right, like close this one. Let's get right to the next one. So, let's get to the next one.
Yeah. And real quick before we get to the next one, I almost feel like Troika is telling one whole story, but I really think you could read just the Detective Comics and Robin story and get a complete story and not need the first 2 issues. And that's very rare to say sometimes, reading like a whole, 4-part series, that the first 2 I don't think landed as strong, but Dixon, like I said in the beginning, really pulls these 2 issues together, that he's writing both of them, and I could read both of these and go, oh, okay, because it almost turns into a KGB story that he's the big bad guy anyway, and I think Dixon does it really well.
And Dixon loves these big bads like KG Beast and Bane and all that. And I even almost thought about just asking you, do you want to just skip those other 2 for the podcast and just do these 2? But it seemed kind of like, I don't know, good continuity to do all 4 for the storyline. But I agree 100%. We could have skipped those other 2 and still had a great story. Yeah.
Maybe moving forward for the podcast, folks, Terrence and I had to run our ideas behind, because I had I had the exact same idea of like, we could just do these 2 and just mention the other 2 in passing. So we need to start sharing notes before.
Yeah.
Sir, how are you going to tell Master Drake? He'll be devastated. He could do something dangerous.
I'm not. Not yet. I need him focused.
Sir, it's wrong.
We have to make sacrifices, Alfred.
Consider those sacrifices wisely, sir. If he finds out and you didn't tell him, you will lose him forever.
Okay, that was a little abrupt ending right there. We are currently, if you're looking at your watch, we're currently at 45 minutes with this, and we've managed to talk about one book. We had recorded this in one giant recording session. It lasted about 3 hours, and it was kind of late in the evening, so I think we got a little slap happy. So I was doing some editing to try and get things in a more sizable chunk, and even while doing that, Terrence and I had a lot more to say about these 2 issues than what we did with the first 2 issues, and that last episode was like an hour and 15, 20 minutes. So I didn't want to drop another huge episode down on everybody. And maybe somebody's like, no, I like the longer episodes. It's that balancing act of like, how much do we talk? How much time do we take of people? And we want to be respectful of that. So we're going to give you 2 smaller little chunks of episodes here. The next one will be just a little over 30, 40 minutes, but I didn't want to sandwich an almost an hour and a half episode onto everyone. So this is where we are going to end this particular episode, and we will pick it up. We have the availability of doing this every week, so you may get another episode next week. It'll depend on how the rest of the editing for that goes, and if we kind of want to space these out a little bit. So thanks for bearing with us with this particular episode. Again, I just didn't want it to make it a huge, long episode. I wanted you to be able to kind of listen to this and enjoy these 2 little smaller episodes to give you something to kind of chew on as we continue in the rest of the year. So you can get a hold of us in all the different social media outlets that you'll hear in the credits section. So I just want to say thanks to everyone, and we will see you guys on the next episode and the next half of Troika. Thanks for listening to Robin, Everyone Loves the Drake podcast. This has been brought to you by the BatmanUniverse.net. Tim Drake, Robin, and all Batman-related characters are under copyright of DC Comics. This podcast is solely for entertainment purposes, so no infringement is intended by this show. This show is not a good revenue stream. Actually, there's not a stream at all. All music and sound clips are under copyright by their respected copyright holders. So there should be no need to send the Penguins lawyers after us for ill-gotten gains because there are none. You can get a hold of the show a few different ways. We are on Twitter at ELTD Podcast. You can also email in at robineltdpodcast@yahoo.com. Our Facebook page can be found at www.facebook.com/everyonelovesthedrake. And as always, you can message directly over at the BatmanUniverse.net. So email, tweet, or message us. We'd love to hear from you, and we'll read your comments or responses on the show. The show you're listening to can be found a few different ways through iTunes and Windows Media, also over at our host, TVU. Leave us a review on iTunes if you listen there. It'll help spread the word of the show. Make sure you head over to the BatmanUniverse.net, your home for all things Batman and Robin. Thanks for listening to the show and hearing why everyone loves the Drake. We'll see you in a few weeks. Take care.
Get into the car. We'll be the passengers. We'll ride through the city at night. See the city's whip backside. See the bright and hollow sky. See the stars that shine so bright. Stars made for us tonight. All the passengers